Welcome to End of Life University on YouTube. Today I'm sharing with you an audio recording of a wonderful interview I did with two women, Shelley Buck and Kathy Curtis, who are the co-authors of a book called Leave Your Light On, which tells the story of the life and the afterlife of Ryder Buck, who is Shelley's son. This is a really powerful conversation. We talk a lot about writing about grief and how writing can help us through our grief, but also some amazing stories about Shelley's experiences after the death of her son. And I think you're really going to enjoy this. So stay tuned for that. Before you leave, be sure to subscribe to this channel so you can get notifications each time I upload a new interview. Hello, everyone, and welcome to End of Life University podcast, where we share real talk about life and death. I'm your host, Dr. Karen Wyatt, and this is episode number 266. Thanks so much for joining me here again today. Hard to believe that I've done that many episodes in the last few years. But today I'll be sharing with you an interview with Shelley Buck and Kathy Curtis. We're going to be talking about a book they wrote together called Leave Your Light On, which discusses the life and the afterlife of Shelley's son, Ryder Buck. It's a really inspirational story, and you'll see when you listen to the interview that I have some personal connection to this story. So I hope you'll take a listen and perhaps find some encouragement here as we talk about loss and grief, but also transformation and transcendence that sometimes follows the death of our loved ones. And so I hope you'll check it out and listen. Before we get started with that, just a couple of announcements. One is, as a favor to my friend Suzanne O'Brien, I wanted to let you know she's going to be doing her free level 1 training for end-of-life doulas on October 1st. So you can still sign up for that if you want to tune in and get the free training, the very first step in working toward becoming an end-of-life doula. But this free training is really enough for anyone in the community who would like to know more and gain a few skills and some information about taking care of a loved one at the end of life. And then also Suzanne is offering her certified end-of-life doula training this fall, which starts on October 6th. So I'll have links for both of those events in case you're interested in signing up. Just go to the show notes at eolupodcast.com and look for episode 266. You'll find links there for both the free training and the certified training for end-of-life doulas from Suzanne O'Brien's Doula Givers. And I'm excited to share this kind of information because I really believe that we're going to need a lot more people with training and skills around end-of-life care as time goes on. And so I think it's really important that these kind of trainings are out there and available. So I just wanted to let you know about this one in particular, and I'll have other announcements over time in the future as other teachers begin to offer their courses as well. And then finally, I just want to thank all of my supporters on patreon.com. I really appreciate you being there for me, making small monthly contributions that keep this show on the air. If you're listening and you'd like to join our team of supporters, you can go to Patreon, patreon.com/EOLU. Pretty simple. And you'll find a place to sign up there, contribute as little as $2 a month, and you'll get some bonuses for joining our team. So thanks again to everyone out there who's been supporting me for the past 4 years or so now. And we'll move on with our interview for today. Just remember to stay tuned afterwards. I'll come back with a few takeaways and to say goodbye to you. So here we go. Today, I'm very happy to be welcoming two guests to the podcast. First, I'll introduce Shelley Buck, who is a storyteller and artist who creates original jewelry at Shelley Designs. She and her husband, Chris, met while working for the Disney company and had 3 sons, their oldest of which was named Ryder, who was at the beginning of a music career when he was diagnosed with cancer. This began a heartrending journey that is the subject of the book, Leave Your Light On, the musical mantra left behind by an illuminating spirit. And we'll be talking all about this book today. But I want to welcome Shelley. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Karen. It's a pleasure.
You're so welcome. And along with Shelley, we are also welcoming Kathy Curtis, who is one of Shelley's lifelong friends. But Kathy is also a healing artist and a writer who supports the transformation of grief and illness through creative expression. She's the author of Invisible Ink, a memoir about her own journey through grief. And she's the co-author, along with Shelley, of the book, Leave Your Light On. Kathy, thanks also for joining me today.
Well, thank you, Karen. I'm glad to be here.
And I wanted to mention Kathy's website is kathycurtisink.com. And you can learn more about Leave Your Light On at ryderbuckmusic.com, Ryder spelled R-Y-D-E-R, ryderbuckmusic.com. And is that the best place for people to go to find the book, Shelley?
That's one of the places. You can go direct to Amazon, but you can link from the landing page, which has a link to the book sales at ryderbuckmusic.com, and then you can go on into his website and learn more about him, see his videos, hear his music, and that's the best place to contact me. There's a contact page there.
Okay, and we'll mention it again before the end, but I wanted to make sure I got the websites right here at the beginning. And so I'd like to start our conversation today just by asking you, Kathy, I want to set the foundation for our discussion. If you would talk about, in your experience and through your work, how writing can help us heal grief, illness, and loss.
I sure can. I really feel that our ability to express the things that we're going through, especially the things that are profoundly life-changing in any way, so whether we've lost someone, who died, whether we've, lost some aspect of our health, whether it's a relationship, whatever it is, it's big. We get caught in different tiny little aspects of what we're going through, and they kind of keep us in a rut. And doing something like writing, or it can be artwork, or it can be walking. I mean, there are ways to get your feelings out, but particularly writing, because when you put things down on paper, you get them out of your head. And you get them out in front of you, where what a lot of the people that have been through my programs tell me, it's like they can't make sense of anything until they get it out in words on paper where they can look at it and begin to make sense of it. So I think that is probably the number one benefit of doing writing. But there's some really great research about what happens to you when you're writing, and what happens in your brain is that it's a very calming. I think there are actually chemicals that get released in the brain when you're expressing yourself on paper that calm you down. And so when you're going through any kind of a big transition like that, there's a lot of stress involved. And so writing is a way to calm you down. Those are two of the big things that I think are important for people to know.
Yeah, I was remembering back when my father died, which was a number of years ago. He died by suicide. But for me, writing was one of the ways I felt sane, I guess, during that whole process for years. Writing in my journal, but eventually I started writing poetry, which I'd never done before. I just started trying to do that. I started writing some stories, and all of it was helpful, even when I wasn't writing about my dad or writing specifically about his death. Just being able to write words seemed to help me.
Great, yeah.
So I was curious for you, Shelley, in your experience, in this whole process of writing Leave Your Light On, which is an amazing book, and just just an incredible story, so heartfelt. I said heartrending as well. It's just incredible, and I'm so impressed that you were able to do this, able to write this book. And I was wondering what the process of writing it was like for you, Shelley, and if it was helpful to you at all with your grief.
Oh my goodness, yes. The book started out as a Caring Bridge journal where I kept my closest friends and family updated on Ryder's um, uh, process through cancer. I started it really pretty much the day after he was diagnosed. And I kept it for my own sanity, as you say. And it chronicled my feelings, it chronicled his feelings, everything we were going through, and it helped organize them. It identified and clarified things. And when we got ready to write the book, I was told I needed a ghostwriter, and I didn't know which end was up because I needed to take it out of journal form. And Kathy is my best friend and a writer and an obvious fit, even though I didn't see it at the time. She had to kind of hit me over the head with a sledgehammer. But
that's a true story.
It is a true story. So it helped me to go back through everything, again, to organize my thoughts and my feelings. And then we gathered stories from Ryder's friends, and that was very healing. It really lifted me up. So the process of putting this book together was the single most important thing I did. I mean, we did a lot of things to bring his memory to life, to keep his light shining in the world. But the book was the most profound.
Yeah. Oh, and I wanted to say one of my absolute favorite parts of the book was the fact that you used some old essays of writers from school in the book and featured his entries on Caring Bridge. And to be able to read Ryder's words as he was going through this process, that was really profound for me because I could read your description of Ryder as being an old soul, and even talking about his spiritual transformation that happened for him through his cancer. But to read it in his own writing, in his words, just made it so clear and so touching. And so I think that was brilliant. Also, that you did include all of these testimonials from friends in the book. Another nice touch, and I was wondering for either one of you how you decided to add those into the book.
Go ahead.
I can take a little bit of this, Shelley. We knew that going into this, that we wanted the light that Ryder lived in his life, meaning his personality, how he thought, what his soul was like all those things. We wanted to paint a picture for a reader to be able to relate to him for who he really lived his life being. And all those elements really helped. I mean, having Ryder's very own words is something that not everybody would have had, and we had them. We had, when they had the celebration of life, this isn't a part of the story that knocks me out. It did right from the beginning, and it's never stopped. And that is that they were expecting maybe 300 people to come to the celebration of life. 1,200 people showed up and stayed for 3 hours and left these cards that they wrote out, telling these stories. And so the power of that was like, well, you couldn't ask for a better way to show who Ryder was, not to tell you, but to show you. So we were very fortunate to have all that.
Yeah, and I think also Ryder's music, the songs that he's written. I know, Shelley, you've put together albums of his songs and even had his band recreate, I guess, some of the original songs that Ryder wrote?
Yes, the first album that we have just Ryder playing and singing, which is wonderful. I mean, there were studio musicians to fill out the sound, but these were songs that he had recorded really just prior to his passing, and he was going back into the studio the next day to record some more. And then he had maybe 30 more songs that he had written, and they often performed, but he had never recorded them. So the band, with his youngest brother singing his parts, went into the studio and recorded them. And we have 2 more albums. So there are 3 CDs available of his music. Some of the songs came straight from his journal, and one, remarkably enough, he sent in a message after he passed, and that's included in the book.
Wow. I mean, that has to feel gratifying in some ways, that you've been able to preserve Ryder's music, because, as I mentioned, he was at the very beginning of this promising career as a singer-songwriter when he died. And I mentioned cancer, but the tragic story is that Ryder didn't die from his cancer. He died in a terrible accident.
Right.
And so, so I was thinking about parents going through cancer with their children and all of the ups and downs from that, and that perhaps you may have prepared yourself in some way, Shelley, for the possibility that your son could die of cancer. And then just when he gets good news about the cancer and things are going well and he's back in music, he dies in an accident. And I'm just, my heart, I just feel the unspeakable pain of that on your behalf. And the fact is that you and I are connected because my daughter went to the same music school as Ryder, and so I knew through her the day Ryder died, and I knew this story, even though I'd never met you. And so I felt connected to you for a long time as a mother experiencing this kind of loss. And I don't know if you could talk to us a little bit more about what that's been like for you.
Well, I will start at the very beginning of what you were saying. Ryder and I didn't entertain the idea that he might die. I'm sure he faced it in his quiet moments because he was facing his own mortality. There's no doubt about that. And his spiritual quest was fueled by that. But we never spoke of it. I had confidence in the doctors. The prognosis was good. And we just didn't want to give death the power of being a possibility. So when he was cleared of the cancer, he was shot out of a cannon and we were all just dancing. I mean, and then to have him meet this tragic end was so out of the blue and so shocking, completely unexpected, and left me flat. In fact, he spent his last day on earth with your daughter, Gia, in a private yoga session. And he called me afterwards and said, "Mom, this was so incredible. Can I buy a package of them?" Meaning, can I buy him a package of them? So yes was the answer, of course. And we were headed down that path. And he didn't come home that night.
I know Gia called me also right after that yoga class, and she'd been teaching yoga classes for a while. She was teaching a class at Musicians Institute for the other students, and that's where she met Ryder. He came to her class at MI, but then asked her if he could do a private class with her, and she was just getting started with the idea of teaching yoga privately to individuals. She called me after that session with Ryder, and she said, "Mom, this was like the most amazing, incredible experience I've ever had as a teacher. And so I was so excited for her that day, and then the very next day to get the news um, of the accident and Ryder's death. And I I wanted to mention that Gia went back a few days later to the park where she'd been teaching Ryder and sat under the tree where they had done yoga together. And she received a song, a complete song, all the lyrics and the keyboard parts to this song called Ride This Wave, spelled Ryde, Ride This Wave for Ryder. And so Ryder has continued to have this profound effect on people. I mean, he did when he was in the physical form, but he's continuing to work in the world as far as I can see.
Absolutely. In fact, she recorded that and sent me a video of it, which I hold near and dear to my heart and rewatch it occasionally. But he did and does continue to contact people and contact us through other people, and the stories just go on. We've been lucky enough to have messages come through a friend. She would wake up in the middle of the night and see this message like a fax in front of her, and it would stay there until she transcribed it into an email for me. And this happened for months after Ryder passed, and really, really lifted me up. I mean, it helped so much and would carry me for a week through this unspeakable grief.
And it's interesting to me. I came away from the book believing this, that Ryder's cancer was an incredible accelerant for his spiritual growth. Like, he used the whole process of having cancer, even the suffering of it and the pain, everything that he went through. But he really transformed that into remarkable spiritual growth. Because it seemed to me, and you can tell me if I'm right about this, but it almost seemed to me that he was a completely different person by the end of that cancer journey than he was before he started. Is that how it seemed to you?
He really was. I mean, he was always a calm character, but he went from calm to serene to just kind of floating above the planet through his studies. And when we went into the hospital for his inpatient treatments, he would take, all sorts of spiritual books and read those along with his lyricist and music books. He was really diving deep into his spiritual world and was taking it wherever he could get it. He had meetings with a friend who he called a spiritual guru, but she told me that she was learning more from Ryder than she ever knew, and he seemed to have it figured out, which is high praise for a young man, because she was my age. So and then he also went to Bali that summer after he was cleared, and kind of immersed himself in their culture and their spiritual beliefs, and just came home a profoundly different person. He was so calm that walking into our household with the younger brother, who was kind of a storm, was hard for him, and I could see it jangled his nerves when he had to come home from being on the mountaintop or down at the beach with his guitar, that he had to walk into this swirling storm of a household. And it wasn't that bad, but his younger brother was definitely a force to be reckoned with. And he'd go off to his room or take his guitar and go back out.
Yeah, I had the feeling, I mean, I don't know, I'm reading into this, but almost as if Ryder's soul knew that his time on the planet was short. And so it seemed to me, I mean, he did the kind of spiritual growth that most of us would spend our entire lifetimes hoping, wishing that we could grow that much or that we could learn that much. And he did that so quickly that it almost makes me wonder if somehow his soul knew time is short and I need to learn this, and I need to help other people and transform other people's lives.
Yeah, he had us read what was it, Kathy?
It's called Proof of Heaven.
Yeah, Proof of Heaven. He insisted Chris and I read that the summer that he was cleared when he went to Bali. And it's about a man who knew he was a doctor and knew he had a terminal disease, and really started to learn and acknowledge the other side, and experience it. And his wife finished the book for him. But Ryder also played songs that had the theme of death in them. And they kind of rattled my nerves. But I think he was preparing. And of course, like I said, the cancer journey would bring that all to the fore for him. So he definitely did some meditating on that possibility.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And it also seems as if he was setting the stage to continue doing the work he's doing from the other side, from the spiritual realm. Because, well, Gia tells me Ryder is a spirit guide for her. Like, she feels his presence, and she often receives songs, and she knows when they've come from Ryder, or if they're connected to Ryder, or the inspiration came somehow from Ryder. But Ryder and Gia have another friend, Marchan, who went to music school with them,
Right.
who also died very suddenly and unexpectedly at the age of 23. And Marchan was another singer-songwriter, who also wrote a song for Ryder, as I know.
Yes.
And so there's something, I mean, I get goosebumps when I talk about it, because this all seems very unique to me. It's like a story that I haven't heard before anywhere else.
Yeah, I would say that's true. I think, that's really, when we think about Ryder, his understanding of the light, which is kind of a term that I think a lot of people intuitively, they know what it means, but he lived, in my opinion and my observation, a completely unique life. And so therefore he had a completely unique spiritual light. And he lived it so like intensely every day, going after just getting every last drop of that joy and love and experience of life that he wanted. It made his light so big that it doesn't surprise me at all that he's continuing to have this impact from the other side, like you said.
Yeah, I think that message really comes through in the book of live every moment of your life. And like Ryder certainly did that. And don't neglect anything. Get the most out of every single thing that you can and experience it fully. And has that message made a difference to you, Shelley? Do you feel like that's changed your life at all?
Oh, absolutely. I needed something to pull me out of the depth of despair that I was going through after he passed. And that light and that joy and the stories that came in from people and videos of him and his gigs, even during his chemo, he scheduled gigs in between his rounds in the hospital. his example for living uh, with hope and promise, um, it lifted me up and helped me put one foot in front of the other when it didn't seem like I could even breathe.
Mm. And so he really gave you the tools that you would need to survive this tragedy, but also to even grow through it.
Right, absolutely.
Well, one thing about the book as well, Shelley, not only does it tell Ryder's story, but it talks a lot about your story, um, which is also, just tears at the heart as a mother. And I think that's what I felt all along as a mother, holding space for you and the pain of having, first of all, having a child who's dealing with cancer, and especially at his age, when he desperately needed you to help him, but also needed to be independent and wanted to be independent. And now also having two younger sons as well that you needed to just be a normal, regular mom for. And I can't imagine how you must have been just torn in two by these two roles you had to play during that year.
I was stretched very thin. Like I said, I was at the hospital every day with Ryder when he was inpatient, and then he'd be outpatient for 2 weeks. And, I had to be there, um, really waiting on him hand and foot, or at least being aware of every need he might have for the first few days. And then he would rebound and be off and running. And of course, that brought its own worries. But my second son was away at college in Michigan. So other than time on the phone with him, which, was substantial, he's a talker. Um, I didn't have I didn't have much interaction with him. We did end up going to one of his plays in between Ryder's last two rounds, and I would again stretch thin, trying to be there for each of the other boys. And Reed, the youngest, was demonstrative. He was pushing boundaries. He was 16, I think, and uh, ready to have his license, and but still needed me. And he was acting out, and um, I relied heavily on community and my mother and my sister, who could be there when I couldn't, during the inpatient rounds. And yeah, Reed was pretty demanding in his needs. I remember one night, it was the night before, the night of a dance, one of those formal dances at the high school, and he last minute needed a gold lame bow tie to match her dress. And I mean, where was I going to go for a gold lame bow tie with just hours to produce this thing? And I said, all right, let me get out my magic wand. I'll figure this out, Reed. And sure enough, TJ Maxx at the top of the street had a gold lame bow tie, and I came through with flying colors. But those were the kind of demands that, he was testing me and how much I cared, and my mettle, and how I could come through for him when I was spending all this time doting on Ryder. So I was stretched thin, and I did count on everybody that I had at my disposal. Again, through Caring Bridge, I was able to communicate my needs, and people just flocked to the door. I mean, we never made a meal from the time Ryder was diagnosed until that next summer, because of our community, our wonderful, rich community.
Mm, that's amazing, and that's such a gift, because I mean it's a testament to what a difference it can make just having food available and not having to worry about that every single day.
Right, right.
Well, there's a couple of things I wanted to talk about, some of the stories, and in the book. One thing that the fact that you and Chris both worked for Disney, I love that you talk about your appreciation for magic and how you were able to just bring this enchantment in a way, into your sons' lives as you were raising them. I thought that was really beautiful to hear. But that it seems like that there's always been this kind of whimsical, joyful, playful spirit in your family, and that's what probably makes you the perfect people to work at Disney.
Well, it was my dream job, and I moved across the country when I was 25 to fulfill my dream, my childhood dream to work at Disney. And that's where I met Chris, my husband, and we started, as soon as we were married, we started having children immediately, and Ryder came along, and we just I thought up, mostly I'll take credit for this, silly little ways to bring the magic into the house. The tooth fairy would leave footprints of glitter from the windowsill across their foreheads, across their pillow. The leprechaun turned all their pictures upside down in the house and colored the milk green and the toilet water. And the Easter Bunny was ever present. One year when they were really too old for an Easter egg hunt, we strung yarn of different colors. They each got their own color all over the house, through the backyard and around the trees and up into the playhouse. And they had to rewind this yarn in order to get to their baskets. One was up on the roof of the garage. One was up in the playhouse. So we did what we could, and Santa still fills stockings. I mean, we haven't given up on that, and that's something everybody participates in now. But when the kids were young, it was just so gratifying and so much fun to see their little eyes light up with this wonder. So it kept us going in that way.
And there's a story near the end of the book that I see as magical that I hope that you'll share with the audience, and tell the story of the ukulele. And I don't care which one of you tells that story, but that just, reading that story just delighted me, and it felt like such magic and miracle and synchronicity and just so perfect in a sense. So would one of you be willing to tell that story?
Sure. Kathy, did you want to do it, or do you want me to?
Oh, I'd love to, because I'm with you, Karen. I thought that was just beyond magical. I mean, so Shelley gets an email from a man named Mike that she had never met. And he had just gone to Hawaii with his family over, I think, Thanksgiving break. And he and a friend that went with him found a ukulele in down in the bottom of a lagoon. And they went down and retrieved it and brought it up and found that it was full of pages, which they pulled out and they let them dry out. And the whole while, he said they were feeling a little guilty, like maybe they were prying into something, but they couldn't help it. They were so curious to know what was going on. And the letter started out, "Dear Ryder," and they figured, oh, it's a breakup letter. And the more they read, the more they got the feeling that it was more than a breakup letter. And then just within a few weeks, either before or after that, the girl who wrote it, which was a girlfriend of Ryder's, who did that as her ceremony of goodbye after she found out that he had died, and she poured her heart out and put it in this ukulele and threw it into the ocean. And her grandmother or her mother were there filming the whole thing. So it had happened like that. This man and his friend who had been through cancer, this man was a ukulele player. Like, there were so many connecting dots. And so then he started Googling to figure out who this Ryder Buck was. And there were many of them on the music sites that he visited. But I think she mentioned, what was the mountain?
She mentioned Sugarloaf
Sugarloaf.
and Elsie Country Club, where they had worked as lifeguards together.
Right. And there were actually two places where that could have worked out. One was in Ohio and one was in La Cañada. And he finally figured out, he found the trail all the way to Shelley, sent her this email. And it was just, I'm still in awe of the way that it played out and everything that had to come together for that particular thing to happen. But I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yeah, I just loved it. It was like it was a delightful story, and the wherewithal of Mike to do all that research.
I know.
He was so determined, I think,
Yeah.
to find you. But what a gift, I guess. Or how did you feel about it, Shelley? It just seems like such a gift to have received that and have that story come full circle. And it almost seems like, did Ryder orchestrate this whole thing just for you?
Exactly.
I absolutely believe that. And one of the most poignant things Mike said was, I just want you to know that a spirit and the music can live on and reach people across the country. And that still brings tears to my eyes, because it was exactly that. It was Ryder becoming present again in the most amazing way. How this man found me, found my email address, I have no idea, but we're still in touch.
Wow. That story was just so heartwarming to me, and it's as if for all the glitter that you left and all the surprises and magic that you created when your boys were growing up, Ryder gave you one back. Here's
Yeah.
a little story, Mom, that you can keep forever and cherish. And so, did he send you the ukulele or?
No, I don't remember what happened with the ukulele. I think they put it back, but they copied the letter, and I did get a copy of the letter and the pictures that were in there. And it was several pages long. I mean, it was a lot. Lots of pictures, several pages long in the letter. And, they dried it out and copied it and sent me a copy. And I think they put the ukulele back.
I guess I can imagine they would have felt like they had intruded upon something that was almost sacred in a way, and they needed to restore it, I guess, to its proper place.
Yeah.
Yes, they struggled with that. They didn't know if they were going to put the whole thing back or if they were going to follow its lead. And I'm so grateful they decided to follow the lead and go through the trouble of tracking me down. Yeah, that was just miraculous.
I think that is something interesting for everyone to know, because sometimes we stumble across something that we feel like, oh, this isn't really for me to hear about, but maybe there's a reason, and maybe we're meant to share those little experiences, because it seems like it could be so healing and so helpful when you receive that kind of communication.
Well, it's true. And I've had a lot of people preface their stories with, I hope this doesn't upset you. I thought about not telling you, but I keep getting this feeling from Ryder that he wants me to tell you. And then they have this marvelous, magical story about my son. And I was always so grateful, and I wonder how many of those stories didn't get told, but I'm so grateful for the ones that have.
Yeah, so it's a good reminder for all of us listening out there to not hesitate to share those moments that we have with people, with their loved ones. I mean, that it could make a big difference to someone else.
Oh, right. I lived for it.
In fact, Karen, I would love to tell you a little one that happened for me. And especially being as close to Shelley and the family and knowing everything about everything that has happened. But before we began working on the book, we had, it had not even come up yet. But I knew that Ryder had written a song called Leave Your Light On. And I was in the bathroom one morning, and it's like, I'm looking in the mirror, I'm getting ready, and I keep hearing, leave your light on, leave your light on, leave your light on, over and over and over. It's like it got stuck in my brain. And I thought, what? Should I pick up the phone and call her? I mean, I don't know. But anyway, I did. And I said, okay, I know Ryder has written a song by this title, but for some reason I can't shake it. It's like running through my head over and over. Well, that the day before, which was probably 3 or 4 years after Ryder had died, Shelley had finally turned off the lava lamp in his bedroom, not because she really wanted to, but she, I think, felt like, well, maybe I should be ready to turn that off. And so the fact that I was getting this had meaning for her. It had immediate meaning for her. And that's something that, like you're saying, Karen, you don't know what these things might mean to someone, and why not just go ahead and put it out there?
Yeah, exactly. It might seem silly, or how could that have any meaning?
Right.
But you're right. You have no idea what the connection is. So, Shelley, did you plug the lava lamp back in?
Absolutely, immediately.
And then is that why you ended up choosing Leave Your Light On as the title for the book?
Well, because it was the first song he ever wrote, and because it's really what the story is about. It's about his light and the light of others. And he found a way to bring that out in people just by being very present with them and really listening and really seeing them. And just encouraging people through his own life to bring that light to the fore. It seemed like the obvious choice. Do you have anything to add to that, Kathy?
Well, I do, and it's mainly because I was kind of the witness to Shelley during the writing of the book. I mean, we were sharing the journey, but I was being her good friend. I've been witnessing her journey through it for, the whole time. And what we talked a lot about is the fact that really the thing that brought Shelley back from losing Ryder was the light that Ryder continued to shine into her life every day. And that's a really important thing for anyone who's going through the loss of a loved one. You think you don't want to open your heart up, and you don't want to be vulnerable to the pain that their loss makes you feel, and yet the light of their being, the thing that made you so grateful to have them in your life, that made you love them so much, is the very thing that will pull you forward, because it helps your own light come back on. Because we get it's a really dark, heavy place when we're in grief. And so Ryder's light helped illuminate Shelley from within, and it just kept growing. And so that title to me is just so meaningful. It's like when you were talking earlier about, did his soul know that he was, going to have a short life, and he had a lot to do and a lot to get ready for? Did he whisper the title in my ear? Years before the book. Like, there's just so many things now that I think about looking back. But anyway, yeah.
And part of the reason we wrote the book, Karen, was not just because people said to me after reading Caring Bridge, "Oh, you should really write a book, Shelley. This is great stuff. You really need to write a book." And I was kind of in a blur, just going, "Oh, this is just for us." It's just, but it stayed in my mind until Ryder sent a message that said, "Write my story, Mom. You can do this. I'll be there to help you." And that was the catalyst that launched me forward in a major way and made me start sorting and actually putting it together.
Wow. And I was going to say the subtitle of the book is The Musical Mantra Left Behind by an Illuminating Spirit. And I like the idea of leave your light on as a mantra, because in fact, since the day I received this book in the mail, the title sticks in my head now too. And I find myself saying it to myself, oh, if I wake up and I'm in a bad mood one day, or I'm feeling down or scared or nervous or something, it pops in my head, leave your light on, as if to me, like, remember, you have a light inside. Let your light
Yeah.
keep shining. Don't hide it. Don't cover it up with this darkness. Leave your light on, because that's what we came here for, to shine our light to other people and show it to others. And I love what you said, Kathy, about that can kind of guide us through the grief journey too, of remembering that the light is still there. The light doesn't disappear just because we're temporarily in the darkness. The light still shines for us.
Yeah.
And so I was wondering, Kathy, since you work with grief um, and creative expression, do you have any tips for people who might want to use writing as a healing medium? Any suggestions for how to get started or what to write about?
Yes, I do. This writing to a loved. Well, I went through grief when my mother died, and it was pretty quick the way it happened. She was young. My family was ill-equipped to even know what to do with it, and we never really got to talk to my mother for the 2.5 months from the time she was diagnosed with cancer until she died. And so I was left with just a lot of memories and moments in that 2.5 months that wouldn't go away out of my head. And I wanted to feel like I could, like I had witnessed my mom's journey. I wanted her to know what it had meant to me, like all the things that just stood out to me as big, big moments. I wanted her to know that. So I wrote to her, and I would sit down and I would just go to one of those memories that wouldn't go away. And they varied from just really hard memories all the way to these unbelievably beautiful, poignant moments in the middle of this nightmare that just were amazing to me. So writing to her was so cathartic for me that plus we had done that in life, so it's kind of an organic thing for me. But the thing that I then turned it around because I felt she wanted to write back to me. And I felt a little crazy and I didn't know how to make it happen, but I decided I would go with it. And it was in that process of just, clearing my energy and trying to be as truthful as I could be about what came to me from her, because I didn't want to put my own words into her mouth. I wanted to feel that they actually came from her. And I did feel that way. And in that part of my writing journey, it's kind of like the light that Shelley finally realized was her way forward. I felt this channel of connection with my mother that was so beyond earthly, but it was so real and so fulfilling and healing that I then turned that into a program I've led other people through. So to sum that up, there's a lot of power in and a lot of comfort that you get from writing to that loved one, imagining that they are actually hearing you. And then if you have the inclination to allow them to write back, I can't recommend that highly enough. But there's just some really simple things that you can do, like um, have a picture of them right in front of your journal that you're writing, and just tune in to the way you love them, to the way their very image makes you feel like you light up with love. And then I think because people are a little overwhelmed with, oh my gosh, I have a blank page, what do I write? How about if you just imagine that every time you sit down, you're going to share whatever is real for you right then with that loved one? And I think you can clear and heal so much by imagining that you are really making that connection with them.
I love that, of using writing to be both expressive but also receptive of hearing
Yes,
back what your loved one might say, but then also remembering to just be in the moment and write about whatever's happening right now in this moment
sure.
wherever you are. Well, Shelley, there's one more story I really would love to have you tell, which is about the movie Frozen, which your husband Chris was the director for, but was working on. Am I correct? The whole time Ryder was in treatment for his cancer, and so it seemed to me, I don't know, I know at and Frozen went on to win an Oscar. And I remember Chris saying Ryder was his guardian angel, but it literally seems to me that Ryder somehow was blessing that project. I don't know if you would talk a little bit more about that.
Well, I will. Yes, Chris was in the home stretch of the movie while Ryder was going through treatment. So he couldn't get to the hospital until 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And that was when I would leave. And he was working hard at it, but Ryder came through to a friend after the movie came out, because he passed 1 month exactly before the movie was released. And she was in the theater and she heard his voice. I mean, Ryder's voice, not just a voice, but she heard it and it said, I'm going to keep the box office up, meaning the numbers,
Wow.
yeah. So, and then it proceeded to just break all records and go completely through the roof. And, Chris was right in thanking Ryder at the Oscars. I think a clip of that is still on YouTube under Ryder Buck. But yes, I think Ryder absolutely had, I mean, not to take anything away from the work and the beautiful creativity that so many people poured into it, but I think Ryder had a hand in making it at least a celebration.
And not only that, but the movie itself seemed to have a profound impact on people. The song Let It Go, I've heard so many people say how that song was really significant for them, but also the message of the movie. And I wonder if it's just way beyond the imagination of the people who worked on it, if it turned out to be far more than they ever could have planned that it would be.
Absolutely. And they were blown away. And because even my husband, he thought it was a good movie, but he had no idea how it would be received by the entire world. So everyone was kind of dumbfounded by the scope of its reach and its success. I have to throw in there that in Frozen 2, which my husband co-directed, there's a character named for Ryder, and he's this chill, romantic guy, very much embodied the character of Ryder. And I also found out after the movie came out, because my husband wasn't spilling the beans on anything, that Ryder was partially inspirational for the song The Next Right Thing, when Anna loses two important people in her life, and she has to get up and put one foot in front of the other and just do the next right thing. And I found out that our experience had influenced that writing. influenced the songwriters to write that song. And there's a little segment in a Disney Plus series on, it's called Into the Unknown, The Making of Frozen 2. In episode 3, there's a segment about 10 minutes long on Ryder, his life, his influence, and it's just a lovely piece. And I'm amazed and honored that it made it into this this documentary series.
Wow. Well, I was just thinking of we have quite a spiritual guidebook or map right here with "Leave your light on," the next right thing, and let it go. As the
Really?
spiritual tasks that we all need to be working on. So Ryder, indeed, he left a powerful message for all of us, and I'm not overstating it whatsoever to say that the book is such a beautiful portrayal of Ryder and his life, and then the aftermath of his death, which I know that don't use the word death, because it really feels as if he's passed into a different realm. And so maybe I could say that the aftermath of his passing, and something there for all of us to learn from and be inspired by.
Well, that's my hope. He lived a life that was so inspiring to others. He even had a friend who just met him on the trip to Bali that he took that summer after he was cleared. And she was just wishing her way out of this life. I mean, I don't know if she had made a plan, but she didn't want to be here anymore. And then she met Ryder, and the story's in the book, I think. But his attitude, his joy, his light changed the way she felt about life, and really pulled her out of her depressed state and walked her back from the brink of suicide. I don't think that's overstating it.
Mm. Wow.
I have to tell you, I have Ryder tapping me on the shoulder right now. Is there some? The thought of he knew what he was doing with his spiritual life. He intentionally turned his light on and oozed all the love and compassion and everything that he could. But he also was totally an imperfect human being.
Oh, absolutely.
He was funny. He could be aggravating. He could be all these different things. And I think part of the absolute power and charm of the story of Ryder is the fact that he was all those things, and still the light is what we remember.
Wow. That's a beautiful message. And it is well portrayed in the book, Shelley, because you didn't try to, what do I want to say, to over idealize Ryder's life. You were very honest about the ups and downs and the challenges of being his mom. And so he comes across as a very real human being with his own challenges and flaws, and then his own beautiful light at the same time.
Yeah. He taught me to lengthen the leash. Again, he was just ready to launch into adulthood. He was launching into adulthood, and this cancer diagnosis tethered him to IVs and a bed and the couch when he was home. And I had to learn to let go. And there's that song again. But he needed control. And so, as exasperating as he could be, it was something he absolutely needed, was to have a long leash or no leash, just so that he could move forward and grow.
Yeah, yeah. So many stories about that, of wanting to go camping or staying out late at night when you were home, worrying and agonizing and wondering if he's okay. But
Right.
um, Kathy, well, for both of you, did writing this book change you at all? Did you feel like you learned things just from writing the book?
Oh, I definitely did, Karen. In fact, you kind of summed it up for me when you were talking about how, after reading it and really understanding what it means to leave your light on, that it's like a mantra. It does come back to you in the right moment, when you need to think, well, wait a minute, I can just have my light on right now, no matter what else is going on. But the other thing for me was, I think Shelley and I were, really pretty much involved every day for, a year or more, on the phone multiple times a day, which was great for our friendship because we've lived apart since we were in high school. I mean, we met in junior high and we parted ways in high school, and my family moved again. And we've always been in touch. We've always been really connected, but this, just watered and nourished our friendship in an amazing way. But for the daily interaction with Ryder and his light, it just fed me every single day. I mean, I can't be the same as the woman that sat down to try to help Shelley write a book, because I'm infected with everything about him that I'm so in love with.
Mm. Ah, that's beautiful. And for you, Shelley, I'm sure as Ryder's mom writing this book, there were so many things that you probably learned and gained from this whole process.
Absolutely. I got closer to Ryder, which was, just an answer to a prayer, because I was spending so much time with him and talking about him and clarifying who he was, and getting Kathy's feedback. It was so, so, so good for me to be able to tell those stories and say his name and just bathe in the light of his life. I keep his CDs in my car, and my husband and my sons tease me because it's all I listen to. I'll rotate the CDs, but I don't have any other CDs in my car. So I always feel like he's sitting right beside me when I'm driving. But that was what writing this book was like. I had him with me all the time.
Mm. And it seems like that process must have been profound in some ways, and maybe even cleared up some of the mysteries or some of the questions, or even resolved some of the pain that you went through together during his whole process of being sick.
Oh, it definitely did. Just being able to clarify things and go back over it, organize it, and put it down on paper. As Kathy said, there's a magic to that 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 I gained immeasurably from. And Kathy had tried to get me to write before we started to write the book, and write a letter to Ryder. So I would, and that was it. I'd write one, maybe two. Then she introduced me to haiku, and a couple of those show up in the book. But nothing stuck until we started putting this book together. And that was just an amazing, satisfying, cathartic process.
And then in the meantime, you've shared Ryder's light all over the world, or that will happen as the book sells more and more. So how beautiful that you've been able to carry on his legacy with his music, and then also with his story.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So, we're talking about the book Leave Your Light On, the musical mantra left behind by an illuminating spirit. And it's co written by Shelley Buck, Ryder Buck, and Kathy Curtis. And so, let's review again. People can go to ryderbuckmusic.com, and Ryder spelled with a Y, Ryder, ryderbuckmusic.com. And you're saying there, Shelley, it links to Amazon and other places where people can buy the book.
Correct. And it gives some of the reviews and a little bit of backstory. And then there's a link to, that's the landing page is about the book. And then it links to Ryder's, the rest of Ryder's website where people can find the articles written about Ryder. Whatever podcasts we've done will be, we'll have links on the media page. And there's a contact page that will send me emails directly. But the rest of it is just rich with his videos. And I think a picture speaks louder than any words. And watching him up on stage and the love that just emanated from the stage to the audience is another magical thing in itself. So all of those things are on the website, ryderbuckmusic.com.
Okay. And can people purchase the CDs of his music there?
They can. They are all of the money that's raised for the CDs goes directly to a scholarship we set up. It's a music scholarship through his high school. Or they can find the music on iTunes. There are two, you can look up Ryder Buck, and that's for the first CD. And then the other two are listed under Ryder Buck and the Breakers, which is the name of his band. So going on iTunes or Spotify or Amazon Music, you can find the CDs for sale.
All right. And then, Kathy, how about your book, Invisible Ink? Where can people find that?
People can find that on my website. I have a link to my Amazon page. It's my website being Kathy Curtis Inc., INK.com. And I will tell you, when I published Invisible Ink, it was just simply the letters that I wrote to my mother and that she wrote back to me. And from that point, I developed both an on-the-ground and online program that incorporated everything that had worked so well for me. Then I ended up finding out was working really well for other people as well. And so I'm working on the second edition of the book, which will incorporate an actual writing journey through grief that's based on all that work that I've done before. So that won't be coming out until after the first of the year, but I wanted to throw that in there in case people want to wait for that.
Okay. Well, Shelley and Kathy, it comes to my mind that it was no mistake that the two of you met back when you were 12 years old. You two have been on a journey together, and so happy to hear, Shelley, that Kathy was there for you at just the right time to help create this incredible book, along with Ryder and all of his inspiration. So I, for one, am really grateful that you've come together and created this gift for all the rest of us.
Oh, thank you, Karen. That's beautiful. We feel pretty good about it too, don't we, Shell?
Yeah, I feel like it's a destiny that we were brought together, and this is it's one big step in our growing love for one another, and that's.
Yep. Well, I feel Ryder smiling right now. I've had goosebumps the entire time we've been talking. Ryder saying, this is good. And he's reminding all of us to leave our lights on. Don't turn that light out. Don't let anything stifle it. Leave the light on. So I want to thank you, Shelley Buck and Kathy Curtis, both of you, for joining me today. It's just been wonderful to talk with you.
Well, it's been an honor. Thank you so much, Karen.
Yes, thank you, Karen.
All right. Well, until I hope we get to follow up with each other and talk again soon.
Absolutely. That would be great.
All right. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Shelley and Kathy about Ryder Buck and his life and afterlife, and the book Shelley and Kathy have written, Leave Your Light On. And one thing I just wanted to emphasize again, I don't know if you caught it, but during that interview, I actually had this epiphany, this aha moment, that there were these spiritual teachings associated with Ryder and also with the movies his father has made, that became apparent, at least to me, as we were talking about it. And so the first thing was the title of the book, Leave Your Light On, which is also the title of the very first song that Ryder ever wrote. And my interpretation of that idea of leaving your light on is, don't let fear or sadness or anger or any negative emotion douse your inner light, because we need as much light as possible in the world right now. We're going through a dark time. And so think of this every single day. Leave your light on. Make sure that you're shining every day for other people to see, because that's where our hope will come from as we move forward. And so take this little bit of wisdom from Ryder. Leave your light on. Wake up in the morning and think, make sure my light's turned on. I want to leave my light on all day so that I can be a beacon, so that other people can find their way through the darkness. And then the next lesson, we talked about the song from the movie Frozen, Let It Go, and what a powerful message that song had. And Shelley was telling us how they received emails and letters from people all over the world who were inspired by the message of Let It Go. And that's another huge spiritual teaching of how no matter what's happening in our lives, we have to be able to let go of our bitterness and our resentment and our disappointment and our expectations, all the attachments that hold us back and keep us from growing in life. We do have to remember to let go of the way we thought things would turn out in life. This was true for Shelley as she navigated her grief journey over Ryder's death, and a death that she wasn't prepared for, even though he had cancer, because his cancer was treatable and curable. She hadn't really faced the possibility that he would die. And then the devastating fact that he died in an accident was just unthinkable in the moment. And yet, as Shelley has moved through these years since Ryder's death and has also had a lot of connections with Ryder, and then seen how amazingly other people have been transformed even after Ryder's death, she has been learning herself to let it go, even while she is still working with all the materials that Ryder created and putting his message out into the world. So again, to review, leave your light on. Don't let anything dim your light or turn it off, and let it go. Be willing to surrender all of your expectations, accept life how it is. Nothing's working out the way any of us planned on right now, but we don't have any other choices. We have to let it go, because if we cling too much to what we wanted or what we hoped for, we will just dim our light. We will not be able to go forth in the world with courage and with light and love. And so keep going. Let it go. Let go of the disappointment. Let go of all your fear. Let go of your attachments to how you hoped or thought things were going to work out, and keep moving forward. And then the third message, which is a song that was written for the movie Frozen 2, and the songwriters knowing that Ryder's parents were suffering grief. And again, Ryder's father, Chris Buck, was the director of both Frozen and Frozen 2. The songwriters wrote this song the next right thing just for Ryder's parents and put it in this movie. And it's really touching. We talked about it during the interview, but I wanted to share with you just some of the lyrics. If you haven't heard the song before, you should really listen to it and then go back and read the lyrics. So beautiful. So this is just the first verse of the song that I'm going to read here, but the whole thing is beautiful. I've seen dark before, but not like this. This is cold. This is empty. This is numb. The life I knew is over. The lights are out. Hello, darkness. I'm ready to succumb. I follow you around. I always have. But you've gone to a place I cannot find. This grief has a gravity. It pulls me down, but a tiny voice whispers in my mind, you are lost, hope is gone, but you must go on and do the next right thing. And then the very last line of the song, when it's clear that everything will never be the same again, then I'll make the choice to hear that voice and do the next right thing. I absolutely love that sentiment that sometimes the only thing we can do is the next right thing. Sometimes that's all we can see. That's all in front of us that we can understand or hear or recognize, is that there's just one step and it's in the right direction, just one step toward something good. And we have to take it one step at a time. We can't look ahead any further than that. All we can see is, I will take this one step. This is what I recognize I need to do now. So let's review those 3 things again. And I think this is a fabulous little mantra for us right now with everything we're going through in our country. These 3 steps. Thank you, Ryder, for teaching us this. Number 1, leave your light on. Don't let anything dim it or turn it out. Number 2, let it go. Be willing to surrender your attachments and all your disappointments right now. And number 3, do the next right thing. And that's all you really have to focus on. Just try to see far enough ahead to know the next right thing. Take that step, make that effort, offer that love, be of service, whatever the next right thing is that presents itself in front of you. And that is how we will get through each day. That's how Shelley and Chris have survived the death of Ryder. And that's what will help each one of us get through as we're going on our journeys through this life where right now everything is uncertain. Everything is unknown about the future. So leave your light on, let it go, and just do the next right thing. As always, I'll be back next Monday with another episode, so be sure to tune in. If you enjoy this content, please share it with other people who might benefit by listening in to some of these podcasts. And you can also help the show by leaving a review wherever you happen to listen, whatever platform you listen on. So subscribe to the podcast and leave a review, and then it will be shown to more people who are searching for content like this. So until we're together next week, remember, we're here for love. So face your fear, be ready for whatever comes your way, and love each and every moment of this most precious life. Bye-bye.